Every year, on October 14th, my family celebrated my sister's birthday. There was always a cake. There were always candles. And there was always an empty chair at the dining table. My mother would spend hours preparing Emily's favorite foods. My father would buy fresh white lilies and place them beside her framed photograph. Then we'd sing happy birthday to a girl who wasn't there, to a girl I had never met, to a girl who supposedly died before I was born. I never questioned it. Why would I? As a child, you trust your parents. You trust that the stories they tell you are true. For 20 years, I believed I had an older sister named Emily. Then one afternoon, I discovered that she had never existed, and everything I thought I knew about my family began to fall apart. The discovery started after my grandmother died. While helping clear out her old house, I found a wooden chest hidden in the attic beneath stacks of blankets. Inside were journals, dozens of them. Most contained recipes, shopping lists, and ordinary family memories. But one journal was different. It was wrapped in a faded blue ribbon. The first page I opened changed my life. The entry was dated 21 years earlier. It read, "Sarah refuses to let go of the baby. Michael is helping her maintain the fantasy. I fear this will only get worse. Sarah was my mother. Michael was my father." I kept reading. "They have started calling the baby Emily. They speak as if she is alive. The doctors warned them this could happen after the trauma." My hands began to shake. What trauma? What baby? And why was Grandma writing as though Emily wasn't real? That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I asked my mother a simple question. "Mom, what happened to Emily?" Her smile disappeared instantly. My father stopped reading his newspaper. The room became silent. "Why are you asking that?" she finally said. "I just realized I don't actually know." My father cleared his throat. "It was a long time ago." That wasn't an answer. It was an escape. For the first time, I noticed how uncomfortable both of them became whenever Emily's name came up. And once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing it. Over the next few weeks, I started investigating. I searched through every family photo album. Emily appeared in only 6 photographs. That seemed strange. If she had lived for years before dying, there should have been hundreds. School photos, family vacations, birthday parties. Instead, there were only 6. Even stranger, she was always alone. Never with my parents. Never with relatives. Never with friends. Always alone. The more I studied the pictures, the less real they looked. Eventually, I visited the county records office. I expected to find her birth certificate. Instead, the clerk searched for nearly 15 minutes before looking at me with confusion. "I'm sorry," she said. "There's no record of anyone by that name connected to your parents." My stomach dropped. "Check again." She did. Nothing. No birth record. No death certificate. No school enrollment. No hospital records. Nothing. It was as though Emily had never existed. I left the building feeling sick. Part of me wanted to stop searching, but another part needed answers. A week later, I visited my Aunt Rebecca. If anyone knew the truth, it would be her. When I mentioned Emily, she looked nervous. "Ethan," she said quietly, "some questions are better left alone." "Not anymore." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. "You deserve the truth." My heart pounded. "What truth?" She looked toward the window before speaking. "The family never agreed with what your parents did." I felt a chill run through my body. "What do you mean?" "After the loss, your mother wasn't herself anymore." "What loss?" Rebecca hesitated. Then she said the words that changed everything. "There was never a daughter, Ethan." I froze. "What?" "There was a pregnancy. A baby that never made it to birth." I couldn't breathe. For a moment, I honestly thought she was lying. 20 years of birthday parties. 20 years of stories. 20 years of memories. How could all of that be built around someone who never existed? I drove home in complete silence. Nothing made sense anymore. That night, I confronted my parents. I placed Grandma's journal on the kitchen table. I know. Neither of them spoke. I know Emily wasn't real. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father looked defeated. For several minutes, nobody said anything. Then my mother finally broke. 21 years earlier, she had been 7 months pregnant. The baby was supposed to be a girl. They had already chosen a name. Emily. They had already decorated the nursery, bought clothes, bought toys, imagined her future. Then tragedy struck. One rainy night, my parents were driving home from a doctor's appointment. A truck ran a red light. The collision nearly killed both of them. The baby didn't survive. My mother was devastated. The grief consumed her. For months, she barely left the house. She stopped speaking to friends. She stopped answering calls. According to my father, she spent entire days sitting in the unfinished nursery. Then, one day, she began talking about Emily, as if she were still alive. At first, it was harmless. She would wonder what Emily would look like, what she might enjoy, what kind of person she might become. But over time, the fantasy grew. She imagined birthdays, school events, friends, dreams, achievements, and eventually she stopped speaking about Emily as a possibility. She spoke about her as a reality. The doctors urged counseling. The family urged counseling. But my mother refused. My father didn't know how to help. So instead of confronting the fantasy, he joined it. He thought it was temporary. He thought it would help her heal. Instead, it became their entire reality. Year after year, they celebrated Emily's birthday. Year after year, they added new stories, new memories, new details. The fantasy became stronger. Eventually, even relatives stopped arguing. The lie had become too big. I listened in stunned silence. Then I asked the question that had been haunting me. The photographs. My father lowered his head. We created them. I felt physically ill. Using old pictures from magazines, altered images, and eventually digital editing. They created photographs of a daughter who never existed. Everything was fake. Everything. I wanted to be angry. Part of me was. But looking at my mother, I mostly felt sadness. The woman sitting across from me wasn't a monster. She was someone who had never recovered from losing a child. For the first time, I understood the depth of her pain. Yet something still bothered me. Something didn't fit. Grandma's journal hinted at more. Much more. A few days later, I returned to her attic. I searched every box, every shelf, every drawer. Finally, I found another journal hidden behind a loose wooden panel. The final entries were written only months before her death, and they revealed a secret nobody had told me. The accident wasn't entirely random. My father had been driving. He was exhausted after working a 16-hour shift. According to Grandma, he had nearly fallen asleep several times. When the truck entered the intersection, he reacted too slowly. The police never blamed him. Legally, he wasn't responsible, but he blamed himself. For 21 years, he carried that guilt. Suddenly, everything made sense. My mother's fantasy wasn't the only reason Emily continued to exist. My father needed her too. As long as Emily remained alive in their imagination, he never had to fully face what happened that night. The fantasy protected both of them, from grief, from guilt, from reality itself. When I confronted him with the journal, he broke down. It was the first time I had ever seen my father cry. "I should have protected her," he whispered. "You couldn't have known, but I should have." For 21 years, those words had haunted him. And for 21 years, he had hidden behind the same fantasy as my mother. That realization changed everything. This wasn't a story about lies. It was a story about pain. Pain that had been left untreated for decades. Pain that had transformed into something unhealthy. Pain that had trapped my parents in the past. Over the following months, things slowly changed. For the first time, my parents began attending therapy. For the first time, they spoke honestly about the baby they lost. Not the imaginary daughter, the real child, the one who never had a chance to be born. The following October arrived. For the first time in my life, there was no birthday party, no cake, no candles, no empty chair. Instead, the three of us visited a quiet memorial garden. My mother carried a small bouquet of white lilies. We sat together beneath a tree as the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves. Nobody pretended anymore. Nobody invented stories. Nobody talked about imaginary memories. For the first time, we faced the truth. My mother placed the flowers on a stone bench. Then she smiled softly. Not the broken smile I had seen for years. A real one. "I think it's time," she said. I nodded. My father nodded too. The silence that followed wasn't painful. It was peaceful, because the truth, no matter how difficult, had finally set us free. On the drive home, I looked out the window and thought about Emily. Or rather, the idea of Emily. She had never existed. Not as a living person. Not as the sister I imagined throughout my childhood. Yet somehow she had shaped every part of our family. She had been grief. She had been guilt. She had been hope. And now she was finally allowed to rest. Sometimes healing doesn't come from holding on. Sometimes healing begins when we finally let go. And after 20 years, my family was finally ready to do exactly that. And that's where this story comes to an end. Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't caused by evil or hatred. Sometimes they're caused by grief that was never allowed to heal. For 20 years, one family held onto a memory that never truly existed, believing it would ease their pain. But in the end, they discovered that healing only begins when we face the truth. What would you do if you discovered that one of the biggest parts of your family history was built on a secret? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new emotional mystery and drama story. Thank you for spending your time with me today. This is Leon Drama Stories, where every story hides a secret, every mystery has a truth, and every ending leaves a mark. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than anything we could ever imagine. Goodbye.